That's useful for gaining insight into the usage performance of an entity in a discipline with relatively poor database coverage, since gaps in the database will apply equally to the entity's publications and to the set of similar publications.
Absolutely. It's also useful as a default to view usage data, since it considers multiple variables that can affect other metrics. And it gives an early indication of the interest in output that has recently become available, for example in the very early stages of a new strategy, or of early career researchers.
Showcasing the engagement of the whole research community, not only the 2/3 who publish and therefore cite, is also important. The 1/3 which does not tend to publish includes large numbers of undergraduate and graduate students, as well as researchers operating in the corporate sector.
Exactly. It also helps demonstrate interest in output produced in disciplines with low citation potential, such as clinical research and the arts and humanities, which are generally well-read but poorly cited.
This metric should be used with care when information about the magnitude of the number of views received by an entity's publications is important. In these situations, it's advised to use views count or views per publication.
Demonstrating excellent performance to those who prefer to see high numbers might also be important. Views count or views per publication would be more suitable in these circumstances.
What about when entities are small?
For small entities, the metric may fluctuate significantly and appear unstable over time, even with complete database coverage. Field-weighted views impact calculates an average value and is strongly influenced by outlying publications in a small data set.
And what if trust needs to be built in research metrics?
This calculation accounts for multiple normalizations, and generating the average views for similar publications requires calculations on the entire database, which will be difficult for a user to validate. Users are advised to select simpler metrics, such as views count or views per publication, if trust in the accuracy of the metric's calculations needs to be built.
Completely answering every question about performance from a usage perspective is important. Field-weighted views impact is very useful and accounts for several variables, but using it to the exclusion of other metrics severely restricts the richness and reliability of information that a user can draw on.
Useful partner metrics are views count and views per publication. They indicate the magnitude of the number of views received, to complement the relative view offered by field-weighted views impact. They are also simple and allow transparency on the underlying data to build trust in the accuracy of metric calculations.
When comparing entities made up of a mixture of disciplines, such as an interdisciplinary collaboration network, it's advised to apply a research area filter to focus on one field that is common between all the entities, or to select field-weighted views impact, which will take this into account.
That makes sense. Revealing the extent to which each of an entity's outputs are viewed is important. One or a few publications with a very high number of views can conceal a sizable body of unviewed or poorly viewed material.
Exactly. There may also be gaps in output in the database coverage, especially for Scopus usage. This mainly applies when entities are small, and a single missing publication may have a significant negative impact on apparent usage.
So, the only way to account for this is to be vigilant. It might be a good idea to limit the use of views per publication to comparing larger datasets in the same discipline, where gaps in the database coverage likely have a similar effect on all entities being viewed and do not invalidate the comparison.
Right. When entities are small, the metric may fluctuate significantly and appear unstable over time, even with complete database coverage. Views per publication calculates an average value and is strongly influenced by outlying publications in a small data set.
I see. People using the metrics don't like to see a trend that dips in recent years. This typically happens with views per publication, because the most recent publications have had less time to receive views than older ones. Users are advised to use field-weighted views impact to avoid this drop if it is a concern.
Yes. Useful partner metrics are field-weighted views impact, which is a complement to views per publication and takes into account behavioral differences between disciplines. Field-weighted views impact also avoids the dip in recent years due to the most recent publications having had less time to receive views than older ones.
That's helpful. So, field-weighted views impact indicates how the number of views received by an entity's publications compares with the average number of views received by all other similar publications in the same data universe. How do the views received by this entity's publications compare with the world average for the database?
Similar publications are those in the database with the same publication year, publication type, and discipline, as represented by the Scopus classification system. A field-weighted views impact of 1.00 indicates that the entity's publications have been viewed exactly as would be expected based on the global average for similar publications in the same database. The field-weighted views impact of world, that is, the entire Scopus database, is 1.00. A field-weighted views impact of more than 1.00 indicates that the entity's publications have been viewed more than would be expected based on the global average for similar publications in the same database. A field-weighted views impact of less than 1.00 indicates that the entity's publications have been viewed less than would be expected based on the global average for similar publications in the same database. For example, 0.55 means 45% fewer views than the world average within the same database.
Publications can be allocated to more than one category in the Scopus classification system, right? When calculating the expected views for similar publications, it's important that these multi-category publications do not exert too much weight.
Exactly. For example, if a publication peer belongs to both parasitology and microbiology, it should not have double the influence of a publication that belongs to only one or the other of these. This is accounted for by distributing publication and views counts equally across multiple categories. Publication P would be counted as 0.5 publications for each of parasitology and microbiology, and its views would also be shared equally between them.
So, field-weighted views impact is a usage impact metric.
Correct. Field-weighted views impact may be displayed in a chart or table with months and/or years. In Serval, the year shows the date on which items became available online. This may be different from the official publication date. They do not refer to the years in which publications were viewed.
This metric is useful to benchmark entities regardless of differences in their size, disciplinary profile, age, and publication type composition, such as an institution and departments within that institution.
Yes, and it helps to easily understand the prestige of an entity's usage performance by observing the extent to which its field-weighted views impact is above or below the world average of 1.00. It also presents usage data in a way that inherently takes into account the lower number of views received by relatively recent publications, thus avoiding the dip in recent years seen with views count and views per publication.
That's useful for gaining insight into the usage performance of an entity in a discipline with relatively poor database coverage, since gaps in the database will apply equally to the entity's publications and to the set of similar publications.
Absolutely. It's also useful as a default to view usage data, since it considers multiple variables that can affect other metrics. And it gives an early indication of the interest in output that has recently become available. For example, in the very early stages of a new strategy, or of early career researchers.
Showcasing the engagement of the whole research community, not only the 2/3 who publish and their foresight, is also important. The 1/3 which does not tend to publish includes large numbers of undergraduate and graduate students, as well as researchers operating in the corporate sector.
Exactly. It also helps demonstrate interest in output produced in disciplines with low citation potential, such as clinical research and the arts and humanities, which are generally well-read but poorly cited.
This metric should be used with care when information about the magnitude of the number of views received by an entity's publications is important. In these situations, it's advised to use views count or views per publication.
Demonstrating excellent performance to those who prefer to see high numbers might also be important. Views count or views per publication would be more suitable in these circumstances.
What about when entities are small?
For small entities, the metric may fluctuate significantly and appear unstable over time, even with complete database coverage. Field-weighted views impact calculates an average value and is strongly influenced by outlying publications in a small data set.
And what if trust needs to be built in research metrics?
This calculation accounts for multiple normalizations, and generating the average views for similar publications requires calculations on the entire database, which will be difficult for a user to validate. Users are advised to select simpler metrics, such as views count or views per publication, if trust in the accuracy of the metrics calculations needs to be built.
Completely answering every question about performance from a usage perspective is important. Field-weighted views impact is very useful and accounts for several variables, but using it to the exclusion of other metrics severely restricts the richness and reliability of information that a user can draw on.
Useful partner metrics are views count and views per publication. They indicate the magnitude of the number of views received, to complement the relative view offered by field-weighted views impact. They are also simple and allow transparency on the underlying data to build trust in the accuracy of metric calculations.
So, moving on to citation count, the only way to account for potential gaps in the database is to be vigilant. Consider also limiting the use of citation count to comparing larger datasets in the same discipline, where potential gaps in the database coverage likely have a similar effect on all entities being viewed and do not invalidate the comparison.
That's right. There is also a concern that excessive self-citations may be artificially inflating the number of citations. Users can judge whether the level of self-citations is higher than normal by deselecting the Include Self-Citations option.
And for uncovering the performance of publications in the very early stages of a new strategy, or of early career researchers, the short time that has passed since publication will reduce the reliability of basing decisions on citation information. Users are advised to use metrics such as scholarly output or collaboration in these situations.
The people who will use the data don't like to see a line that dips in recent years. This typically happens with citation count, because recent publications have had little time to receive citations. Users are advised to use field-weighted citation impact or publications in top journal percentiles to avoid this drop if it is a concern.
Useful partner metrics for citation count are citations per publication and field-weighted citation impact, which bring complementary perspectives into view on total visibility, and also account for differences in the size of entities being compared. Field-weighted citation impact also accounts for differences in publication and citation behavior between disciplines.
Exactly. Field-weighted citation impact, outputs in top citation percentiles, and publications in top journal percentiles avoid the dip in recent years due to little time having passed to receive citations since publication.
Cited publications provides a measure of the reliability that an entity's publications will subsequently be cited, and is not affected by a high number of citations received by one or a few publications.
H indices, whose values depend on a combination of citation count together with scholarly output, are logical partner metrics.
And the set of all other power metrics, whose value tends to increase as the entity becomes bigger: scholarly output, subject area count, Scopus source title count, cited publications, total value, number of citing countries, collaboration, total value, academic corporate collaboration, total value, outputs in top citation percentiles, total value. Outputs in top citation percentiles, total value. Publications in top journal percentiles, total value, and H indices.
And don't forget the set of time-independent metrics that provide useful, reliable information immediately upon publication and do not rely on the passing of time for useful data to accumulate: scholarly output, subject area count, Scopus source title count, collaboration, academic corporate collaboration, and publications in top journal percentiles.
Right. For example, field-weighted citation impact in CIVAL indicates how the number of citations received by an entity's publications compares with the average number of citations received by all other similar publications in the data universe.
So, how do the citations received by this entity's publications compare with the world average?
A field-weighted citation impact of 1.00 indicates that the entity's publications have been cited exactly as would be expected based on the global average for similar publications. The field-weighted citation impact of world, or the entire Scopus database, is 1.00.
And if it's more than 1.00?
that indicates the entity's publications have been cited more than would be expected based on the global average for similar publications. For example, a field-weighted citation impact of 2.11 means 111% more citations than the world average.
Conversely, a field-weighted citation impact of less than 1.00 indicates fewer citations than expected.
Correct. For example, 0.87 means 13% fewer citations than the world average. Similar publications are those in the Scopus database that have the same publication year, publication type, and discipline, as represented by the Scopus Journal Classification System.
Publications can be assigned to a classification system in two ways: journal-driven and publication-driven, right?
Exactly. Journal-driven assignment assumes that every publication within a journal fits within the same disciplines as the journal's scope. Each publication automatically adopts the subject classifications assigned to the journal. This method is suitable for journals focused on a core field.
And publication-driven assignment assumes that publications within a journal may have additional or different relevance to fields outside the core focus of the journal's scope. This allows assigning individual publications from a journal to their relevant classifications, which is important for publications in multidisciplinary journals.
Right. Field-weighted citation impact uses publication-driven assignment. Publications are allocated to the classification subcategory level and can be allocated to more than one subcategory. When calculating the expected citations for similar publications, it's important that these multi-category publications do not exert too much weight.
For instance, if a publication belongs to both parasitology and microbiology, it shouldn't have double the influence of a publication that belongs to only one or the other subcategory.
Exactly. This is accounted for in CIVAL by distributing publication and citation counts equally across multiple categories.
Thanks for explaining all this. It's a lot to consider, but understanding these metrics and their proper use is crucial for accurate research evaluation.
Absolutely. It's all about using the right metrics for the right context and being aware of their limitations and strengths.
Hi. I'm trying to understand the field-weighted citation impact, FCI, and its implications in research metrics. Could you explain how FCI works, especially in terms of how publications are counted across multiple journal categories?
Of course. When a publication spans multiple journal categories, such as parasitology and microbiology, the FCI counts that publication fractionally. For instance, publication P would be counted as 0.5 publications for parasitology and 0.5 for microbiology. Its citations would also be shared equally between these subcategories.
That makes sense. I also read that FCI is a citation impact metric and a snowball metric. Could you elaborate on this?
Certainly. FCI is indeed a citation impact metric that normalizes citation counts. CIVAL, a tool often used for these analyses, displays FCI in charts or tables based on the years in which items were published, not the years citations were received. It counts citations from the year of publication and the following 3 years.
How is this metric useful for benchmarking?
FCI is useful for benchmarking because it allows comparisons regardless of the size, disciplinary profile, age, and publication type composition of entities. You can compare institutions, departments, countries, and small research institutes. It provides a clear picture of an entity's citation performance relative to the world average of 1.00.
That's helpful for understanding its broad applications. But are there situations where FCI should be used with caution?
Yes, there are several scenarios. For instance, if the magnitude of citation numbers is important, it's better to use citation count or citations per publication. FCI can also be unstable for small entities, because 1 or 2 highly cited articles can skew the metric. Additionally, it's less reliable for entities with a large proportion of recent publications due to fluctuations in the initial period after publication.
I see. So, for new strategies or early career researchers, FCI might not be the best metric?
Exactly. In such cases, it's better to use time-independent metrics like academic corporate collaboration. FC should be part of a broader metric set rather than used in isolation, to provide a richer and more reliable picture of performance.
What partner metrics would you recommend using alongside FC?
Partner metrics like citation count and citations per publication are useful. They complement FC by indicating the magnitude of citations received. For immediate and reliable information upon publication, use time-independent metrics such as scholarly output, subject area count, Scopus source title count, collaboration, and publications in top journal percentiles.
That's a comprehensive overview. Thank you for explaining how to effectively use FC and the importance of considering additional metrics.
My pleasure. Always remember, no single metric can fully capture research performance. Using a combination of metrics provides a more accurate and trustworthy evaluation.
Hi. I came across the metric output in top citation percentiles in Cival and wanted to understand it better. Could you explain how this metric works and its significance?
Of course. Outputs in top citation percentiles indicates the extent to which an entity's publications are among the most cited in the Scopus database. Specifically, it measures how many of an entity's publications are in the top 1%, 5%, 10%, or 25% of the most cited publications.
That sounds interesting. How are these percentiles determined?
Cival calculates the citation counts that represent the thresholds for the top 1%, 5%, 10%, and 25% most cited papers in Scopus per publication year. Sometimes, the same number of citations at a specific boundary, like the 10%, might be received by more than 10% of publications. In such cases, all publications with that citation count are included within the top 10% of the Scopus data universe, even if it exceeds 10% by volume.
So, the metric uses the entire Scopus database as the data universe?
Exactly. Cival uses these citation thresholds to calculate the number of an entity's publications that fall within each percentile range. The publication type filter affects both the data universe used to generate the citation thresholds and the entity's publications on which the calculation is performed. However, the exclusion of self-citations only affects the entity and not the data universe.
When can this metric be calculated?
Outputs in top citation percentiles can only be calculated for the current year from the first data snapshot in early June. Until then, it will display as a nil value since division is not possible early in the publication year when items have received very few citations.
How does field weighting work with this metric?
When field weighting outputs in top citation percentiles, the document citation ratio is used instead of raw citation counts. The document citation ratio is the number of citations a document has received divided by the expected number of citations. The rest of the calculation is similar to that of the field-weighted citation impact. The value displayed is the number of outputs meeting the benchmark, so it differs from FC, which is normalized around 1.00.
What type of metric is output in top citation percentiles?
It's a citation impact metric, a snowball metric, and a power metric when the total value option is selected. However, it is not considered a power metric when the percentage option is selected. Cival displays this metric in charts or tables by the publication year, not by the year citations were received.
What are the practical uses of this metric?
This metric is useful for benchmarking contributions towards the most influential, highly cited publications globally, especially among entities of different sizes but similar disciplines. It's advised to use the percentage option when comparing entities of different sizes to normalize for this variable. It also helps distinguish between entities whose performance might appear similar when viewed through other metrics and showcases the performance of prestigious entities with highly cited publications.
Are there any cautions I should keep in mind when using this metric?
Yes, use this metric with care when comparing entities in different disciplines. Citation counts vary significantly across disciplines. For example, fields like immunology and microbiology tend to have higher citation counts due to frequent publishing and long reference lists, while fields like mathematics have lower counts due to less frequent publishing. These differences reflect the distinct behaviors of researchers in different fields, not necessarily differences in performance.
Thanks for the detailed explanation. This really helps me understand how to use the outputs in top citation percentiles metric effectively.
You're welcome. Remember, it's important to use a combination of metrics to get a comprehensive view of research performance.
Hi. I've been reading about the outputs in top citation percentiles, metric and Cival and its intricacies. Could you help me understand it better and point out any caveats I should be aware of?
Of course. Outputs in top citation percentiles indicates how many of an entity's publications are among the most cited in the Scopus database. It measures the top 1%, 5%, 10%, or 25% of the most cited publications.
How are these percentiles calculated?
Cival calculates citation thresholds for the top 1%, 5%, 10%, and 25% most cited papers in Scopus for each publication year. Sometimes, multiple publications may have the same citation count at a specific boundary, like the 10%, leading to more than 10% of publications being included.
What should I keep in mind when using this metric?
This metric should not be used to compare entities across distinct disciplines without accounting for differences. For mixed discipline entities like institutions or countries, use the research area filter to focus on a common field. Be cautious with small entities, as missing highly cited publications can skew results. Excessive self-citations can also inflate numbers, so consider excluding them.
How about for early career researchers or new strategies?
In such cases, the metric might not be reliable due to insufficient time for citations to accrue. Use metrics like publications in top journal percentiles for immediate insight. Also, trust in Cival's metrics should be built gradually, possibly starting with simpler metrics like citations per publication.
What partner metrics complement this one?
Useful partner metrics include cited publications, which counts publications with at least one citation, and publications in top journal percentiles, which tracks publications in the most cited journals. Other power metrics include scholarly output, subject area count, Scopus source title count, and citation count. Time-independent metrics like scholarly output and academic corporate collaboration are also valuable.
Speaking of publications in top journal percentiles, can you explain how it works?
Certainly. This metric shows the extent to which an entity's publications appear in the most cited journals based on CiteScore, SNP, Source Normalized Impact per Paper, or SJR, Imago Journal Rank. The data universe includes items indexed by Scopus with these journal metrics, excluding standalone books and trade publications.
How are these journal metrics thresholds determined?
Thresholds for the top 1%, 5%, 10%, and 25% most cited journals are calculated separately for CiteScore, SNP, and SJR. Cival uses these thresholds to determine the number of an entity's publications within these ranges. For CiteScore, Cival uses the highest relevant CiteScore percentile based on the subject area filter. The metric values for the publication year are used as much as possible, with 1999 values used for outputs from 1996 to 1999.
Thanks for the detailed explanation. This really helps clarify how to use these metrics effectively and the nuances involved.
You're welcome. Always remember to use a combination of metrics for a comprehensive view of research performance.